I've done things in a slightly different order today because, to be honest with you, I'm a little bit stuck. I'm working on my PowerShell function in Azure, but I can't get it to create a file. And I believe that's because of permissions in Azure. I'm assuming that writing files to disk in Azure Functions isn't allowed. That's my guess. That's my educated guess on the matter. So I am trying to figure out how to work around that. And this morning I put up a Stack Overflow question, which it's one of the things where you just kind of throw a question out into the void and then hope someone gets back to you in time. Stack Overflow is really good though. Someone always seems to answer. It's really good. So someone's given me an idea, which is using write into a temporary folder, which is built into PowerShell, which I didn't know about. So that's good. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try that out. But yeah, it was one of the things where I was like, right, I'm going to put out this question, then I'm going to go out for my walk, and then hopefully by the time I come back, someone would have sorted it out, and they have. So happy about that. I do still need to figure out how to not deploy every single module required to talk to Azure. But I'll figure that out after. Let's get this running first. So what did you say, my boy? What did you say to me? Guys, you just missed it. A pigeon was on the roof. This is exciting. Right, so it works. If you use a PowerShell command called new temporary file, or in general just interact with the temp folder rather than the home folder, you have permission to play around with that. The problem is that what I did was I just dumped all of the modules, the Azure modules, up into the cloud just to see if I could get it to work, and it doesn't. So gonna go back to the drawing board on that one. Even though that was the bit that I thought was the easy bit. I thought that was the bit that I'd solved, but alas, not. Oh god damn it, man! This is the fun. This is the fun of solving your own problems, but the downside of solving your own problems, all in one. It's exciting, it's good fun, but really demoralising when you don't actually fix it. But when you do fix it, god damn, that dopamine kick, that rush. While I really want this thing deployed today, I'm going to try not to get myself bogged down in it as much as I can. So let's do my blog post. Let's do a bit of that. Formula 1's on today, so free practice is on in Monza, so I'm going to watch a bit of that. That's it. By watch it, I mean listen to a bit of that. See? Did I put that down or no? So I've converted my blog post. So the way that I write my blogs, by the way, if you're at all interested, is I write them initially in Markdown. So I put my code into this, I think it's called focus mode or whatever, and I write the blogs initially in Markdown. So here's what the blog looks like for now, and then what I do is I pass that through Grammarly to make sure that it's all nice, and then I convert it into HTML, and then what I do is copy and paste that into Visual Studio so it's all running there, and then I get an instance of the blog here, which is on my test sites at localhost. And I've been playing around with how it looks because I can't figure out how to get the code to look good. This will be the first time I've written code for the site. I can't figure out how to get the code to look good and the rest of the text to look good, because obviously code can get quite long, like line length gets long, and the problem is there isn't spaces, so it doesn't cut it. So you end up having to have like horizontal scroll bars in place so that you can see all of the code. But yeah, so I was struggling to get that. God, I'm just watching this van reverse around the corner to let another van go. So you basically you get these scroll bars in, because code is naturally longer than real languages, but the whole paragraph is restricted in width for it to read nicely as an article, but then the code wants to kind of go across that line. So yeah, so I've just done that and redesigned it to figure out exactly, to make it basically look good, and make sure it looks okay with code in it and whatnot. And I'm trying to figure out, do you remember me saying in my previous video that I don't know whether or not this blog is going to come to you in multiple chunks, or if it's going to be like a master one. So, because at the moment, this one is about writing acceptance tests, which are what I call acceptance tests, in ASP.NET web applications, so MVCs and .NET Core and all that kind of stuff. I want to, so that covers everything at the moment. I'm not covering spec flow or anything like that. What I want to add in is how to set up the authentication, which on its own is big. And then I want to do a similar one. Well, I'm trying to figure out if, and I guess I can figure out by actually writing on there and seeing how long it takes. I also want to do the same kind of thing for message bus, so for mass transit, because that is slightly different. And it doesn't use any of Microsoft's default stuff. So I think that's different enough to do, but I don't want this to be massive. I know if I add security in, it will be too big. So I feel like as soon as you've added security in, it's going to be at least 2. But does it make sense to do web, security, mass transit, or does it make sense to do web, then mass transit? Well, web and mass transit at the same time, and everything. So that's kind of where I'm at. So yeah, that's where I'm at. But I feel like I've potentially finished at least the first part of this blog, so I can lop that off of my to-do list. Like I say, I'm just annoyed / struggling to figure out how much further to take it. Maybe I'll just write the mass transit one on there, because the thing is, if I do it as a separate blog post, then there's kind of like a bit where I've got to glue them all together. You know what I mean? I'm going to have to do that for the security stuff, but this style of blog post is like completely alien to me in my like writing style. Like in general, my style is really waffly and like what's the word? Pretentious, let's say. Where I craft these. If you go to my old blog, which I think is still up, jeremyped.wordpress.com, something like that. Like I craft these really complicated metaphors across all of it and make it all wishy-washy and try and be really fucking clever, but that doesn't apply to code ones. It's about like brevity and being quick and short to the point. So my initial intention is just write one really big one, and I'm like, what would I like if I was to see this? Would I get annoyed at the fact that it's... The thing is, I'd Google, right? I'd Google for one or the other. So I'm going to come from Google. I'm not going to come from I'm not going to come to the site and just go next, next, next. And you can't go next, next, next on the site, which is kind of what's making me go, yeah, do I really want to do this? Obviously, I'll mention in the web one that I'm going to cover off security in a following blog post. But it's figuring out whether or not I'm going to put mass transit in there. If I do split it up, I'm going to post them weekly rather than fortnightly. But yeah, so that's where I'm at. I'm figuring out what to do. Otherwise, I've been listening to Formula 1 while working, so I've been living the dream, quite frankly. Yeah, I think the reason why I'm leaning towards shorter posts is because when you go to a post like this, it's rare that you go to one to read the whole thing. You know, there's like a couple that I go to that like effectively tutorials where you work your way down it, but you kind of go there with one question, you find the answer, then you fuck off. So it's like, it's different. Anyway, let's pause there because I'm up against a wall a little bit here. Let's go back to half an hour of trying to figure out how these module things work in Azure Functions, because they don't seem to work the way I'm told they're supposed to work. Formula 1 is back on. In the background. It's really boring. Free practice is so boring. I can't believe they televise it, and I can't believe they have people commentating over it as well. But it's good background noise. Just listening to the cars go around is really good background noise that you can just zone out, you know. I kind of wish, to be honest with you, that they weren't commentating. That would be better. But I have now the first pass through, very first rough draft of my the main portion of my application. I'm going to spend the weekend focusing on the next 2 bits and potentially a third bit, which are going to be the hardest to do. Specifically, because they involve forecasting. And half of my problem with this application is it's kind of for investment in like an idea, kind of like a prototype of an idea. The problem is, which is plays to my advantage as well, is I've already started. But it means that anyone else who's doing this application who hasn't already started can just kind of go, right, so here's the point that I start is here. I can get to here. I, on the other hand, have to go, right, so the point that we start is like February. So where am I going to be in February? And then where can I get from February if I want investment? And that's a double-edged sword. That's a double-edged, like twice as complicated, because I have two sets of variants involved there. But yeah, so anyway, so that is now done. I'm going to get back onto this. The last thing now on my to-do list for today is to get this function deployed to Azure. I have one more idea. So before lunch, I was sat thinking about how to import the modules, and I think there's a chance that I'm importing the module at when the function is started, but not when it's called, which are two different things. I was hoping that I'd be able to import it once at function start, and it would be there in the context, ready when the function's run. So in theory, the way these things work is they're all run basically in app services, but you call the function. Something in Azure is listening, waiting for that function, waiting for calls. As soon as it gets one, it spins up the function if it's not already spun up, runs the function, and then comes back. It will leave the function running for a little bit, and it will see, depending on how much stuff it gets, so it doesn't do a cold start every single time. So in theory, I could have it so that it doesn't have to import the module every single time. I'm not sure what the cost is of that. I'm going to try and do it on every single hit. And if that doesn't work, then I'm really out of ideas. So I've not even got to the point where I'm trying to figure out how to authenticate it yet. So I'm just trying to fucking run it. I'm having a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. But it's annoying because it's one of those things where it's like, write a line. Right, push up the code, wait for the build to finish. The build finishes, release it, wait for the release to finish. Queue up this, get ready for that, refresh the logs, run it, you know? Like, it works on my computer. I have no way of making it work on my computer exactly how it works in the cloud. So, it's fun. This might sound weird, but I can taste Cherry Bakewell. There's not like a weird thing. I've not had anything like Cherry Bakewell. The last thing I ate was an apple, which was a Granny Smith. Not even a sweet apple. And the thing I had before that was orange. Then I had some Stilton. And some chicken, a chicken and cucumber sandwich with salt and vinegar crisps, but I can taste Cherry Bakewell. Now I know if you smell toast, it's a sign of a stroke. Is tasting Cherry Bakewell something similar? That's what I'm scared about right now. Otherwise, I think I've spotted what my problem was, and I'm just doing another redeploy with the entirety of the Azure commandlet inside the modules folder. And the thing was, I was doing AZ ACR build with a lowercase a for AZ. The lowercase a is the Azure CLI, which is installed locally on my machine. Capital AZ is the PowerShell commandlet. God damn it. I've started to come to the point where I feel like I'm gonna have to back away from this. So just using pure Azure PowerShell functions doesn't look like the way, unfortunately. What I think I'm going to have to do instead, or what I'm going to investigate doing, is using a container to do it instead. I can still do that in Azure Functions land, although it runs on a different pricing plan. I actually think it's a little bit more expensive, but yeah, so we'll see how that works. It'll be running on Linux servers instead, using containers, and installing the Azure CLI in there rather than using PowerShell. I don't think it's going to be possible for me to do this in any other way, to be honest. It's one of the things that I'm like really pushing against the grain. Not only am I using a preview tooling that's not even released generally and or stable yet, where the Docker stuff is stable. But I'm also trying to do something that other people aren't trying to do. No one else is trying to solve this problem. It makes it very difficult. The problem with all of this stuff, actually, if you search, like what I was doing earlier when I was trying to figure out why I couldn't create a file, you search Azure function PowerShell create file. Garbage, just absolute garbage in your Google feeds. You end up on page 2 trying to find stuff, you know what I mean? Because it's all the keywords. So it's like, oh, here's how you create an Azure PowerShell script. No, here's how you create a file in PowerShell. How about you put them both together and then tell me? God damn, 7.5 hours already. Bloody hell today. All right, walk time. Oh God, I've got to have an early dinner tonight because we're going to the cinema. But yeah, I think I've come to terms. I'm gonna have to use a container for this. It's a pain in the ass, but mainly because I've got to undo a lot of stuff. But we'll see. We'll see. And I don't get the authentication for free anymore. God damn it! Irony that the Azure function's perfectly authenticated to do this. It just can't do it. Whereas the thing that can do it isn't authenticated. Anyway, so let's get down and dirty. Let's go for a little walk around the block, and then we can come back and figure out what we're doing about food. So I think I'm leaving here about 6:30. So I will have a bit of time to do a bit more work. It might not make sense to do any more work, so I might do some blogging. In fact, I might come down and sit down here on my laptop, do some blogging, and give up on this programming thing for today, and then attack it completely fresh tomorrow, thinking about containers rather than PowerShell scripts. All right then, Stanley. Is this a walk with headphones or is it a walk with not headphones? Do I have a podcast to listen to actually? I probably don't. God damn, I'm just chatting shit. I'm trying to make this video a full video on its own, is what I'm trying to do. I think I've spoken to you a lot today so far, and I'm going to try and start a vlog on a weekend in such a way that I make the weekend vlog good rather than try and make it short just to, you know what I mean? Yeah. Because of that, the plan for the weekend is very work related. Laura's starting up her university work soon, this weekend in fact. So I needed to go to the shop to pick something up, didn't I? I forgot what it was. So I've been carrying on my blog, and I think I'm gonna append the mass transit stuff to the bottom. In essence, there isn't that much different. So I feel like it wouldn't stand alone on its own blog post. It obviously doesn't make sense to put it into the security one. So I'm going to do a mass transit and ASP.NET one, and then I will do a service bus, security one after. So figured it out. I've already started writing quite a lot of like the initial kickoff for it basically. But it's effectively the exact same approach. The only thing is I'm using the approach that I use to replace dependencies in the application to actually change how the application's hosted instead. So it's minorly different, but it's not different enough to warrant its own blog post, I don't think. So in other news, I am just cooking my own dinner. Laura's not having this dinner. In fact, holy shit, I don't actually have that much time for this. God damn, man. Cook faster. Heat up, boil. It didn't occur to me that it's basically 6 o'clock now. I was like, you know what, I might watch an episode of Black Mirror. Yeah, I've been way too relaxed here. So that's coming to boil now. That's ready. I'll be done in 3 minutes. I have about 15 minutes to eat this, wash up, and go. Laura's not going to make it back. She's going to have to figure out her own plan tonight, because I'm not going to be able to give her a lift. We are pushing our luck a little bit. I'm waiting for Laura so she can come back, get changed, and then I can give her a lift. Otherwise she either doesn't go or she has to bus back into town, which I'm not going to make her do after she's bussed all the way here. Apparently she's not had her best day either. So we're pushing our luck. We've got booked seats at the cinema, so it's not like we're not going to get tickets, you know what I mean? Or we're going to get a bad seat. So we'll figure it out. And I mean, film starts at 10 past. It doesn't know, does it? It starts at like 1/2 past. So really we've got ages. It's just, It doesn't feel like we've got ages. It's stressing me out. I don't like being late. But having said this, if I was to leave when I decided all of this, I would have made it. Just about. Only fucking just, but I would have made it. So I was running late anyway. And I think Ben's running late too. So I'm trying to relax to buy everyone more time. And just me and Beth are the only two that are stable, you know? We made it on time, ladies and gentlemen. In the end, I mean, like, it already started, like the adverts and stuff, but we made it comfortable time for the trailers and the film itself. So yeah, we went to go see It Chapter 2 as part of #Horror Club. It Chapter 1 was the film that started Horror Club because me and Ben kind of goaded each other into going. And then we went to see that. Really enjoyed the first one. We went to see A Quiet Place and Us. And I'm trying to think if there's another film we went to go see. I think there was, but it wasn't very good. It Chapter 2. I didn't like it. I didn't think it was very good at all, to be honest. it was okay, but it wasn't anywhere near as good as the first one. Obviously, there's no point watching it if you've not watched the first one. But like, it's like, why? It's just... The reason, I don't know whether or not I have completely desensitized myself from horror films, or it wasn't fun, it wasn't scary at all. You know when you like watch an action film, or you watch action, and then there's so much action that you just don't care anymore, you know? Or like, there's like no tension, there's no like, it's just constant battles. You're just like, oh, cool, it's another one, it's another one, it's another one. That's what this was like, it was just constant. It was just like, oh, this is happening. And there wasn't really a story. And then it would just like flick from character to character to character, from this character's interaction with it, this character's interaction with it, and you're like, there's no suspense, there's no like build up. So it just like wasn't, it was quite funny as well, that probably didn't help the scariness. But yeah, there was people in the cinema that like really found it funny in places where it's like, this isn't funny, dog. But having said that, two couples looked like they left halfway through. Like, well, they left halfway through, they didn't come back. I don't know why they didn't come back. I don't know whether they left because it was too scary or because it wasn't very good, I don't know. But I'm not like disappointed I went, I was just like disappointed the film wasn't, like it just wasn't #Horror Club. Like for me, a horror film is about the mystery. It's about like not knowing what's happening, what's going on. It's like, it's a building of suspense, and it's about what you don't see. It's about what you think is happening, but isn't happening, right? So in like A Quiet Place was really good because it had to rely on sound. It had to rely on things that it couldn't otherwise rely on because some of the characters were deaf and they had to be quiet and all this kind of stuff. So it like built tension, and it was really good for that reason. And the most recent one, I've also fucked my shoulder up, by the way. Fuck me. Us, which is, or US, I think it's called Us though, was fucking brilliant. Like the way that it built tension and it built up suspense, and the way that like everything happened. The music was fucking incredible. I listened to the soundtrack of that somewhat on a regular basis. Was really, really good. And then like this just like fell flat. It like there's at one point it just felt like a fever dream. It was just like, oh, what can we do? Yeah, let's do that, let's do that, let's do that, let's do that. Like fucking rein it in, guys. Also, it was 3 hours long. And that is a long ass film. But yeah, it felt like they just kind of threw everything at it, and then because they threw so much at it, it just like lost all of its effect. You know what I'm saying? So not recommended. Not recommended at all. Us, on the other hand, watch it, and maybe the first one. Watch the first one. That was good as well, and definitely Us. A Quiet Place was good. I think we watched another one, but I can't remember what that was. But yeah, so we got back really late. Laura was in bed. It was 11 o'clock actually, and I've just been watching YouTube videos and watching reviews of it to see if other people thought it was good. I think okay is where it's coming out. ATM. So yeah, I'm not alone. But yeah, cool. Right, I'm going to head off to bed, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to end this video here as well, so that we have a good day tomorrow. Oh, and also, there was a character in it, which I'm not going to say if... Well, you're probably not going to watch it if you've seen this, and by the time this video comes out. If you were going to see it, you probably have seen it. But there's a character in it, which they just kind of introduced. And it was like, oh, that's cool. And it was just such a nothing character. It was like, what's the fucking point in that? Like, you could literally taken out every scene that person was in, and nothing would have changed. And you're like, god damn, that was cool. That was really, like, that was cool that they were in it. But that's enough of that. That might be a spoiler. Yeah, heading to bed. We're going to have a fun weekend. I'll catch you later. I'm back in that world again where I'm like, I need to do something and I don't know how to do it. But I've got to. I've got to figure out how to do it and then do it. And when do I start? I don't know. Welcome to life with no meaningful backup or support, you know what I mean? Like, I've got no one to turn to. God damn. So today has been somewhat productive. We had like a house whip around. I've cleared the path. You know how I've had an obsession with cutting down those brambles. You can now see all the way through. You can't quite get all the way through, but you can see all the way through now. I think next week all I need to do is really cut back some of the stuff because of how tall it was. A lot of it was taller than me. It's all kind of like onto the left, but that means that underneath there's actually some relatively tall stuff, whereas most of it is now trimmed down so you can stand on all of the things. We're going to have to put some actual weed kit down at some point just to stop it all regrowing. It's all very well and good, obviously chopping up the stuff. It's all very well and good chopping the tops of it off, but I obviously haven't been able to pull out all the roots or anything, so working on that. It's making some good progress. I've readjusted my office a little bit, so I've now put my longboard, my all-terrain wheels on my longboard, put this at an angle, put my bags in there, all that shit, so happy days. I have also finished off my blog post, at least the first draft. I'm going to give it a read through and figure out what's going on with it after at some point next week. It's nowhere near due going out, so I've got plenty of time to do that. I have, what else have I done? It's occurred to me that there's one thing I want to do that I've not looked at today, and I'm going to probably do that tomorrow, since the other thing I was looking at today, I've not finished because I don't know what I'm doing yet, so. But yeah, Laura's working, watched Formula 1 qualifying, and then that was when I was changing my longboard wheels around, and potted around, did some like maintenance and stuff, and I've been looking at this thing. I'm trying, like, I have a PowerShell script that works. I'm trying to figure out how to host this. So Azure PowerShell Core is in preview on Azure Functions on a Windows machine. It's not possible on a Linux machine, but on a Linux machine you could do Docker containers. So in theory, on a Linux machine, I can spin up a Docker container with PowerShell in it and the Azure CLI and do what I want. That's the plan. It's a bit more expensive because I've got to run it on an app service thing rather than functions, which are basically free. It means it's going to cost me about £5 a month. Well, I think at max £5 a month. I don't think it actually will cost me that because while the app service is running, it's not doing much. It's basically dead for 90% of the time, which is a pain in the ass, and then I can use it for other things as well. But that's my plan of attack, and I'm trying to figure out whether or not it may be better to do Node rather than PowerShell. But there was all that thing about creating temporary files, which in PowerShell is, but I'll be in a Docker container, so I can do whatever the fuck I want. So I'll be able to write files. So maybe I'll do it in Node, because then in Node it's a bit more stable. But I've still got to create, so yeah, I've got to do all this stuff like creating the Docker images and all this kind of thing. But yeah, so that's where I'm at. I think I'm going to go downstairs and bug Laura as I'm going to do dinner. So Laura's working on uni stuff as well now. She's got uni next weekend. And they've just released all the things she's got to work for her first week. So it's going to be a busy week for her, which gives me lots of time to do lots of programming. So I'm happy about that. It's just the annoying kind of programming where it's really slow work, you know? Mainly because it's all trial and error and all that kind of shit. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying. I need to see how easy it is to interact with the command. I feel like interacting with the command line in Node is just going to be unnecessarily difficult. So it's probably going to be easier just to use PowerShell. But it's that thing about your complexities. It's much easier to create a Docker thing with Node in it than it is with PowerShell. So, god damn it. Technically, I don't need PowerShell. I just need Bash. Maybe I could just do it with Bash. I'm starting to get really annoyed at my laptop, which is out of date. Right, Windows updates aren't updating on it. So you go to the Windows update thing, and it's like, oh, this version of Windows Update, this version of Windows isn't supported anymore. And it's annoying me because I want to install the terminal, which I've got installed on Atlas, and it's great. And I want to use it on my laptop. But I can't do it because I'm on such an old version of Windows 10. And it's like, we need to update this thing. And I'm like, well, fucking update it then. Like, it's your job. Don't tell me that I need to update Windows. Windows, it's your fucking job to update it. So you update it, and it gets to about 89% and fails. And then it's like, try again. You press that, but you press OK, and it's just gone. So you have to wait for it to come back again, and it fails. And it's obviously been failing for a bloody long time. And I don't know what to do about it. So I feel like I need to get it on some kind of installation disk or something. Which is such a pain in the ass. But, fucking hell. Drives me up the goddamn wall. I've only gone and bloody done it. I'm working on the Windows update, but I just got the Azure CLI working inside a container and a function on my machine. So we're back at square one, except it's even worse because it's not logged in. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to flump this into the cloud now, make sure I can get to the point where it errors because it's not logged in, and then I can worry about authentication. Mainly, I want to do it that way around, rather than get it authenticated, then do it, because I want to try and use the service principal, and I'll have the service principal from the function and all that kind of shit. So it'll be easier once it's like partially in Azure, before I then go about making it actually be in Azure. But I've never deployed Docker files or built Docker files using Azure DevOps before. So we're into a world, still in new stuff, even though I've just finished. Oh my God, it was the most laborious task ever. I feel like I'm missing something, because surely it must be possible to glue together Docker containers. Like, if I've created, one of Laura's hairs on the back of my hand somewhere. If I created so for example, the Azure CLI, you can get a Docker container that has that, and it's like Linux and the Azure CLI. Cool. But to run a function, I need to be off of the functions container. So I've kind of got like the functions container, which has everything required to run the functions, and the Azure CLI container here. But what I've got to do is just install Azure CLI into there. And I'm like, there's got to be a way to kind of copy them across. But I guess it's because, like, deep down, that's got a load of things in Linux that this also has. And the problem is that, like, everything, all of Microsoft's Docker things, which is a good thing, are like really bare bones. Like, they don't have anything in them that they might not need. So like, you have to install things like what was it I had to install? And we had this problem as well at my old place. We had to install things like ls and not ls, but really dumb commands that are on all Linux things just aren't there because they're stripped out for size purposes. But oh, that felt good. Right, let's get this checked in and deployed. Let's see if we can deploy it up. Laura's just working in that room. Okay, I've got builds. I'm building the pipeline. I'm building the Docker image, deploying it to function. I forgot to build the CS_proj extensions first, so it didn't work. But I've got it up and running. It's a bit hodgepodge. I'm not really impressed with the way that it was working, so I may have to look into making it a bit better. But yeah, it's going well. But yeah, it's a bit, I'm using a build to both build and deploy it now, which I'm like, I don't really like particularly. But the idea of a build doesn't really make sense for this, because I'm building a build artifact. like the output is a build artifact. You're releasing a build artifact. That's why it doesn't make sense. So it doesn't make sense to have a release. It's bizarre. Yeah, it's just a bit all over the place because I've been hacking away to try and get it up and running. So I think I need to take a step back and sort it, but dinner time. All right then, boys and girls, this is going to be this is the start now of the biggest week we're going to have. we're fully into it now, boys. Laura is at university at the weekend. I have networking event basically all day Wednesday. So it's going to be a jam-packed, basically constant 7-day week for me. That rolls into next week, which will be another 5-day week. So we're on a big old week, boys and girls. We also have some deadlines looming, which is exciting. I need to start focusing on that. I need to get to the point where I can do a lot of it on Wednesday when I'm at the house. So I'm going to do a lot of time today doing a bit of budgeting. That's my plan of attack. And what else? Also, I have to, something I probably should have thought about earlier, I need to send someone an invoice. But I don't have one, so I'm going to have to design and send someone an invoice. So it's all on, boys. It's also an extremely wet day out. Come on, Atlas, wake up. So I went for my walk. Oh, wrong thing. Yeah, I went for an extremely wet walk with an umbrella. It's a normal length walk. I don't know why I said extremely. To try and get all my ducks in order, figure out what it is my plan of attack is going to be today. I need to do a lot of budgeting and a lot of like finance related stuff today. A lot of budget projections as well, so it's not even as fun as it sounds. Yeah, it's all kicking off. So I've got this invoice I need to sort out. I need to do a business plan and a budget plan. I need to figure out how to get this function deployed because it's taking me longer than it should. I need to finish out my blog for Thursday. It's a busy time, but it's easily doable, boys and girls. This is me you're talking to, king of productivity. Let's get down and dirty. Let's just jump into it. Good grief, ladies and gentlemen. I'm scoping out how much things are going to cost me over the next year. And like this, so the plan was there was kind of two different plans. The first plan was to, which is the predominant plan, is to build a stable base of services that I can offer to businesses. And that will give me revenue in order to be able to build out slowly a number of people that will be able to help me develop RadSpider in the end. RadSpider is the end game, but also hire people to bolster services. Obviously I'd have to hire some business people, a business person at least, and then some developers help me out with the services and the development of RadSpider and roll out from there. The idea being, it's very much me, it's very much my style, build a steady little ground and then go for it like that, right? The problem is, well, not the problem, but the other route is bring in investment and grow faster. Grow faster without a steady base of money coming in. So subsidized with investment and or the money that I already have and or debt. And I'm forecasting this. If I was to get X amount of investment at the beginning of next year, how I'd spend it. And I'm like, it's just gone. It's already gone. Because like getting dev machines, getting computers and stuff. So this is looking at bringing in 4 contractors. They won't be paid contractor rates. They'll be paid salary rates. But I'm not sure what the legal implications are of me hiring someone knowing that I'm going to run out of money in a number of months, because the investment is for a competition. So I'll be able to pay someone, and effectively you do the competition. At the end of it, you pitch it to investors who may be able to invest more money. I won't be able to keep on these employees if I don't have money. So I'm going to have to call them contractors because otherwise I'd have to pay for redundancy? I don't know. This is the thing. So this is the thing where I get you. I'd like to tweet about this kind of stuff, but I shouldn't because tweets aren't searchable. YouTube videos are less searchable. But like this vlog is an insight into just how fucking little I know about this kind of stuff. And I'm like, what's the legal implications of this? Am I allowed to do that? How much does this cost? How much does that cost? I mean, I spec'd out the hosting services for this. And I'm estimating that at minimum requirements, so without boosting things up to give it more power and to handle more load, it'll be about £500 a month to host. That is being frugal and like supporting more or less 1 or 2 users. I mean, I don't expect to have a lot of users. It's not that kind of model. But god damn, man. I'm like, right, so let's say I wanted to pay someone before taxes £2,000 a month. Can I, firstly, before taxes, that's not even that good. That's like £24,000 salary. That is a graduate salary, roughly. So like, I'd really struggle to pull in, especially considering that it's a short, like not guaranteed for a long period of time thing. People of my standard, like my friends that I know are good, are significantly more than £24,000 a year, let alone £24,000 a year for only 4 months, 5 months, something like that. So I'm already struggling. £24,000 a year pre-tax is low, man. And that's just one guy. Plus his computer. I've got to buy his computer. Fortunately, some of the assets I can obviously buy and then sell if I don't need them. So when I buy, I'm basically scoping for 2 developers, a tester, and a business person. And yeah, I don't know, man. I just goddamn don't know. Maybe he's a good person I could try and pull in. But he likes his job. Why does everyone like their jobs? That's what I don't like. They like their jobs and they get paid a lot. Fuckers. Like students or freelancers are the best bet. Students are basically my best bet. Fucking hell. Well, they say you'll never be they say there's never the right time, and you can always learn on the job, right? Is this what they meant? I feel like I don't know enough. God damn it. But prior to, as a good thing, prior to taking on this investment, that forecast looks great. Looks great. And I haven't, to be fair, I haven't forecasted any income yet. So I'm going to try and forecast in some income from code user service or consulting. And hopefully that will offset some of this a little bit. Please. I really don't know what my odds are for securing this investment thing. I'm kind of going in at it for like a sanity check. Like I'm going to get some feedback on my application and like what I've got so far, which will be beneficial, obviously. Like that, then actually that'll be invaluable, to be honest with you. But I don't know what my chances are of this because I'm a bit different to what they're looking for. Which when I spoke to them, they were like this. They seemed really interested because it was kind of different because of the route I was going down. But everything else that they are looking to like invest in is like this money will go towards buying something. To me, it's going towards effectively temporary resources, you know? And I'm not sure if that fits the bill. There's obviously the cloud hosting and all that kind of stuff, which is obviously an expense which it was going to really help me with. But because my when I start to scale that up, my runway starts to shrink quite significantly. Since my the amount of money I pay myself a month is 200% of what the costing would be, but my outgoings will go up 50% as soon as this goes live. Before it even goes live, because I've got to get it up and make sure it runs for a bit. Oh man, I just don't know, man. Sometimes, whenever I get a bit of, sometimes I have a cup of tea, right? And then when I get to the end of the cup of tea, it makes me feel sick. What is that? And I have to have something like sweet to not feel really queasy. There is something, I've read about this before, there is something in tea, and I can't get a fucking orange out of this bullshit bag. There we go. There's something in, fuck you. I'm not going crazy, there is something in tea, which usually milk helps fight, that makes people feel ill or queasy after they've eaten it. So I'm not completely insane. Also, I've just done some forecasting with assuming some kind of income from code reviews as a service. Assuming like a customer on each tier, spaced out. And it's all right. My worries can be slightly diminished, I think. So I think I might do a forecast with and a forecast without income from that. I don't really know, to be honest. I'm kind of guessing a bit, but we'll see. See, I don't feel queasy anymore. What's that all about? That's wild, isn't it? Right, let's have a look at... I feel like I'm going to pause this now. I've done some forecasting. I know roughly what I'm doing. I'm going to run it through Laura later and be like, what do you think? Am I being a bit ridiculous? And I'm thinking about splitting out code reviews as a service. One where it assumes it makes no money. One where it assumes it makes no money. One where I pivot and do it slightly differently. And that makes a little bit of money. And then one with it, without it. 3, you know what I'm saying? Right, let's have a look at making an invoice. So, something I've now finished all that stuff. Something I've got to wrap my head around is how to release my container function. So, I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not actually fully sold on the Docker dream. I think people really overblow how good Docker is and like what it's for, if that makes sense. Like I admit, it's pretty powerful. It's pretty cool, but at its essence, don't at me. Docker is basically just VMs, right? But you have to manage, it's obviously not, don't at me, but you still have to manage the containers. Like you have to configure them and you have to do all of this. I don't really live in that world. I like to live in the world where I don't need to worry about any of that shit. And I just deliver the code. Which is like, it's weird how you see the cycles in development, because you see people, obviously, like back in the day, you had a box, and then at a box you created VMs, and then people went to SaaS, where it was like, you just fucking just chuck some code into a thing and then it just runs it. I'm in that world. And now people seem to be going back to this Docker thing, which is basically just VMs again, IMO. And it's, yeah, so I just can't really wrap my head around it in the way that, everyone seems to be like fully sold on it. They're loving it. They live the dream. Personally, I don't get it. But what's interesting is everything else I've ever done, all of my builds are building code. That code is then put into a build artifact. And the build artifact is then released to multiple environments. It's not the same for So you do the build, you build the code, and then the release is going to a certain environment, and the release then configures the code or injects whatever it needs to inject in. So that at that point, that's when it overrides config values and all that kind of stuff. Now Docker harks back to the world where all of the settings are on the VMs or in the Docker file itself. But you build the container, and at that point, once you've built the container, you've got all your settings in it. So you can't modify those settings from that point on. So you have to rely on environment variables or dive out into something else like an Azure, like a key vault or something to get your config values, which I think is just arse backwards. I don't understand why you do that. Like oh man. And I mean, there was a vulnerability as well because people managed to access environment variables, and that was where people were putting all of their shit, and they were like, oh yeah, containers are nice and safe. So they put all their nice and secure credentials into a into a thing. And you're like, yeah, cool, right, whatever, Trevs. So I don't actually have a key vault yet for my dev environment. This is literally my dev environment. And by dev, I mean not like my dev environment that's a shared dev environment for everyone. It's my personal dev environment, which I can spin up. So I live in the world where you just spin up this environment, like everything's in the cloud, spin it up, turn it down again when you don't need it, happy fucking birthday. And so long story short, ignoring my Docker run, it's different because you have to build the container out. And then the container is put into the registry. And then you have your apps automatically update when the container in the registry is updated. So basically, but because your build builds your image, which puts into the container, which it goes into the registry, sorry, that means you don't have a release pipeline. Unless your release pipeline just manages the tags of the image, which arguably is what it does. But it's weird for me because you do the build, then you've got your artifact, which you just point at multiple releases. So you just go release, 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 release. Whereas the container, you build the container, and then the apps just pick it up. You don't have a release. There is no official release. Which seems odd to me. It seems bizarre that that's the way it works, but it is. I'm trying to wrap my head around how that works and how that can integrate in with everything else I've got, because it's just so much more different. Okay, so I think I figured it out. The build is now building the build image and publishing it to the repository. The word publish to repository is the bit that's throwing me. I'm just playing around with some of the tags that I can give the image on its way up. And then I can have a release that updates the function with the new image. I need to figure out how to take the image name across with me from the so if I release the build, even though I'm releasing so if I release the build, technically I'm not releasing this build, I'm just using this to tell me which one to update it to. Nothing to do with this is getting deployed up, except for the fact it's already pushed it up, and then I use that as a trigger to basically get a pointer to that thing. That thing then updates the function with the correct thing, and at that point I can inject in the right configuration settings in the way that I want to, which is much nicer. Figured it out. It's the word publish. You shouldn't have the word publish in a build script. That's the bit that's annoying me. Yeah, so all I need to figure out now is how to manage the tags. So when I do a just standard build, I wonder if I could do the publish behind a gated build. So it asks my permission to publish it. Because I don't want to publish a million of these. Which I'll get if I put it behind a continuous integration thing. I don't want to turn There's an intrinsic cost involved in this that puts me a bit more on edge than other things. And what I've done so far is I've made it so the build is triggered, not ran whenever. Which kind of works out, which works in general for us. Yeah. Okay, so I can build it with specific variables, which basically means that I can either gate the publish, effectively I can gate the publish, or I gate the next bit. I'm gonna have some lunch. I'm a big believer in the fact that you never really know how to do something until you've either failed to do it, or you've watched someone else fail to do it, or you watch someone who's already failed to do it. That makes sense? And I've never seen anyone do this before. That's what puts me on edge. Because it means I'm guaranteed to fail, basically. So, sad times, boys, sad times. Let's get on with some lunch. I said that ages ago. Seething, ladies and gentlemen. I'm trying to deploy this fucking Azure function. I've got the container's being built. but it won't boot into the function app. And I don't know why. It's not even giving me any help. It's literally just like, service unavailable. It's like the app service isn't even up, but it is. I am like known. So I consider myself to be DevOpsy in the sense that I can deploy things. I'm quite good at like deploying stuff to Azure and setting up shit like that. So yeah, I can set up things in Azure, set up deployments from code, like build smoke environments and all this kind of stuff. I can do all that. But when I can't do it, I have a really short wick. My patience for when it doesn't work is really fucking small. I hate things that don't give you feedback as to why it doesn't work. So like security stuff, pain in the ass. it just says unauthenticated, and I'm like, what does that mean? At what point? But yeah, I like, it's a weakness of mine, operations stuff in general, because I just don't. I think it's because effectively I don't have a core. Like we never did a core module on like how fucking web networks work and all that kind of shit. So like I think other people who've had like the same experience to Azure as me, but have that core understanding, find some stuff easier than I do. Where I'm like, this I don't know why this isn't working. Like the guy I used to work with at my place two jobs ago, he was fucking brilliant with like how servers work and stuff, because they did focus that a lot more at their university. And mine stuff was a lot more like effectively theoretical to a certain extent. So yeah, I'm less good at understanding how all of this stuff works without it being like drawn out for me. But I'm gonna one of those things that I don't really know, but I'm gonna freaking learn. Like it's also one of the things that I think you probably underestimate how much you do know. I think I'm like, yeah, I'm mediocre at Git. Someone showed me this. Someone told me this before. That like, you think that you know like the average about stuff. It's very rare that someone will ever go, yeah, I know loads about that. I'm like an expert on that. No one ever does it. And there's tools that we use like Azure and DevOps and Git, things like Git, that you're standard at it. You just take them for granted. You know what I mean? So I probably take for granted a lot of the stuff that I know, and then sell myself short. But all I know is I'm getting really freaking frustrated with the fact that this won't get deployed. I wonder if my app service level is too, but it wouldn't let me. What I'm conscious of is maybe that my container isn't a Linux container, and I'm running it on a but it is though, it is. So it looks like it's something to do with the... If I pull the image down, it won't start. Well, it does start, but it fails. So the app starts, but the kind of the function itself fails. And I think that's confusing Azure's functions. And it's to do with them bloody extensions again. It's not finding the blob tree. So what's bizarre is if I run it locally, it works. If I run it in a container locally, it works. If I build the container in Azure, flump it up into Azure container repository, then pull it down, it doesn't work. So I'm obviously losing something at the build process, which means that I'm not getting the build artifacts for the extension put into the right place. And therefore it can't find it when it starts up the app, fails to start the app, dies. Well, doesn't die, it registers 0. So I've got a little bit further now, it is actually working a little bit better, but it's registering 0, it's registering 0 functions rather than not starting at all. So I've got past the 503 issue. I don't really know what that was though, in fairness to me, but right, let's go for my walk. Let's step away for a bit. come back. Figured it out, boys and girls. Figured it out. So, turns out what I was doing was I was confusing myself about where I got with this deployment and the deployment I was doing the other day when it wasn't container based. So I previously did this as a PowerShell function, and I got it running, but I couldn't get the Azure CLI loaded. Changed it to a container, and then kind of forgot that I'd never proved that I could get the container running. I was just trying to get it up and running with this thing. So, combination of that and not knowing where the logs go if the function never starts to run, because it'll go to App Insights if it's running, but it's not going to go there if it's not. However, it's not going to the normal places, it goes to the Docker logs. I tracked down the Docker logs, authentication failure. Couldn't authenticate with the thing because I had the stupid thing turned off where it didn't have a service principal, and then I just had to authenticate the service principal with the Azure container registry. Happy days, we're now up and running. Kick it up, back to square one where I'm not authenticated in the Azure CLI. That's what I wanted. There was a couple more issues in and around there that I spotted as I was doing all of this. I managed to get the container running locally. I've moved where I'm building the .NET, the extensions. I've moved where I'm building that into the container now rather than outside of the container to make it a bit more condensed and more how containers are supposed to work. I realized that when I was running it locally, it was using a cache version of the container, which just meant that there were several versions of that build thing that may have worked, but I've gone with a better one now. And my release was releasing the wrong thing as well. So happy days. Basically everything was wrong. The problem is you just gotta focus on each bit in turn, and I just basically chopped off each individual bit and made sure that bit worked, and I got there. And then found the log thing, because it kept saying, and I think it might be because of the, I'm cheaping out on the app service that's running my functions. It takes a long time for it to like download the image and install it. And while it's doing that, and the logs are only going to the Docker logs, that's when I'm getting all of this, all of the error, not the errors, but the errors saying function not started or function not able to start, service unavailable. That's when that was going on. Fixed. Semi-fixed anyway. But now I've got it up and running. I can now get that same service principal that I was using earlier to authenticate with the Azure CLI, pass it into the Docker image itself. Happy days. We can move on with our lives, probably get that deployed from the release as well. God damn, man. God damn. Well, I'm glad that's over. Productive day today. I spent a bit longer on this in the evening than afternoon/evening than I expected I would do. But I couldn't get it running. So once I got it running, we're all good, obviously. Words and things. The other thing that I wanted to say was, oh yeah, and I got all my finance stuff sorted. I want to get Laura to look over it, to be like, is this all right? I'm assuming it is all right. And then run through some ideas about how I'm doing my forecasts. See if Laura thinks I'm being unrealistic. And yeah, productive day. We've got shopping tonight. We've got to do a meal plan and all that kind of shit left. So where's my phone gone? I heard it go. All right then, boys. Let's end this video here, ladies and gentlemen. It's a long one. Productive day. Laura likes my invoice as well, and my forecasting thing. I think I might do that thing I was talking about, which I'll do tomorrow, and then we can sort that all out. Happy fucking days. Happy birthday. It's quite a weird thing to guess, I guess, to be honest. But right, cool. Thanks very much for watching this video, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed it. I try my best to keep these interesting. I'll catch you later.